For over 1,000 years, this city has stood at the crossroads of power, knowledge, and rebellion. Kings have made it their capital and fought for its control. Students have debated in its halls while wars raged outside its walls. This is a place where the future of England was decided, where minds were shaped that would change the world, and where ordinary people fought, survived, and built something that would outlast empires. Today, using advanced AI techniques, we can transform centuries-old engravings and faded photographs into vivid, lifelike scenes, bringing Oxford's remarkable past to life in ways never before possible. We're going to walk through every century of this city's existence. From a muddy river crossing to one of the most famous cities on Earth, you'll see triumph and tragedy, genius and brutality, plague and rebirth. This is the complete story of Oxford. Not many people know this, but Oxford's story actually begins before the Saxons. Archaeological evidence reveals a small Roman settlement here, including a kiln and pottery workshops. In 2003, excavations unearthed a Roman pot dating to around 100 AD, proof that people were living and working on this site nearly 2,000 years ago. But the Romans never built anything significant here. They came, they made their pottery, and they left. The real story of Oxford begins with the Saxons. The name Oxford means exactly what you think, a ford where oxen crossed. Around the 8th century, Saxon settlers needed a way to get their livestock across the Thames. They found a shallow point near where two rivers meet, the Thames, known locally as the Isis, and the Charwell, close to what's now Folly Bridge. It was practical, nothing more. A few houses appeared, then a few more. The place became known as Oxenaforda in the Saxon tongue. But Oxford's spiritual foundation comes from a Saxon princess named Friedswide. According to legend, around 727 AD, Friedswide was a young noblewoman who refused marriage to a local king, choosing instead to dedicate her life to God. She established a small monastery here, building a church on the site where Christ Church Cathedral stands today. Whether all the legends about her are true doesn't really matter. What matters is that her church became Oxford's first significant religious building, and Friedswide herself became the city's patron saint. The priory she founded would stand for centuries. By 911, things started to get serious. England was being carved up by Viking invaders, and Edward the Elder, King of Wessex, recognized that this river crossing had strategic value. He built fortifications here, transforming a simple ford into a fortified town. Oxford became part of a defensive network protecting Wessex from Danish attack. The town sat on the border between Saxon and Viking territory, and that tension defined its early years. In 1002, something horrific happened. King Athelred the Unready ordered what became known as the St. Brice's Day massacre. On November 13th, Saxons across England were commanded to kill all Danish settlers in their midst. In Oxford, terrified Danes fled to St. Friedswide's church, seeking sanctuary. The locals barred the doors and set the building on fire. Everyone inside burned to death. Among the dead was Gunhild, sister of Sweyn Forkbeard, the King of Denmark. This single act of violence ensured that Sweyn would return with a massive army to exact revenge. But Oxford survived, and as the 11th century approached, this rough border town was about to be caught in the greatest invasion England would ever face. Oxford submitted to William without a fight. But submission didn't mean trust. Within 2 years, William ordered the construction of Oxford Castle, a massive stone fortress designed to intimidate the population and control the surrounding territory. Robert D'Oyley, one of William's most trusted knights, oversaw the building. The message was clear: Norman power was here to stay. The castle included St. George's Tower, which still stands today. It wasn't ornamental. It was a weapon, a symbol of occupation carved in stone. The Normans confiscated Saxon properties, redistributed land, and imposed their language and laws on a resentful population. But something unexpected began to grow in Oxford's shadow. By the early 12th century, scholars started gathering here. No one knows exactly when formal teaching began, but by the 1120s, there were documented lectures taking place. Why Oxford? Partly because it was centrally located, partly because it sat at a crossroads, and partly because the church was powerful here. In 1133, Osney Abbey was founded just outside the town, adding to Oxford's growing reputation as a center of religious learning. Then came civil war in 1141. England tore itself apart in a conflict known as the Anarchy, fought between Empress Matilda and King Stephen over who should rule. Oxford became a battleground. Matilda seized Oxford Castle and held it against Stephen's forces. He laid siege to the castle in the winter of 1142. For 3 months, Matilda's garrison held out, but eventually the situation became desperate. On a December night, with the Thames frozen solid, Matilda and 3 of her knights escaped by dressing in white cloaks to blend with the snow. They slipped across the frozen river and fled to Wallingford. It's one of the most dramatic escapes in medieval English history, and it happened right here. The next day, Oxford Castle surrendered to Stephen. He took control of the city, but Matilda herself had slipped through his fingers. The war dragged on for another 11 years in a bitter stalemate, neither side strong enough to defeat the other. Eventually, exhausted by endless fighting, they reached a compromise. Stephen kept the throne for his lifetime, but Matilda's son, Henry, would inherit it when Stephen died. Matilda had come within a sword's edge of the English crown, but it wasn't to be. England wouldn't have a crowned queen ruling in her own right for another 412 years, until Mary Tudor took the throne in 1553. But even during those years of chaos and siege, scholars had kept coming to Oxford. Now, with peace restored, their numbers swelled. The real catalyst came in 1167. Henry II, furious with France, banned English students from attending the University of Paris. They needed somewhere to go, and many chose Oxford. The trickle of scholars became a flood. Informal teaching arrangements solidified into something more permanent. Oxford was becoming a university town, though no one used that word yet. By the late 12th century, Oxford had survived conquest, massacre, siege, and escape. But its most important transformation was only beginning. Students and scholars were everywhere now, living in lodging houses, attending lectures in rented rooms, and frequently getting into violent brawls with locals. Town and gown tensions ran deep. In 1209, a scholar killed a local woman. The townspeople, enraged, hanged 2 of his innocent colleagues in retaliation. In protest, many scholars packed up and left Oxford entirely. Some went to Cambridge, where they established a rival university. It was a split that would define English academia forever. Students and scholars were everywhere now, living in lodging houses, attending lectures in rented rooms, and frequently getting into violent brawls with locals. Town and gown tensions ran deep. In 1209, a scholar killed a local woman. The townspeople, enraged, hanged 2 of his innocent colleagues in retaliation. In protest, many scholars packed up and left Oxford entirely. Some went to Cambridge, where they established a rival university. It was a split that would define English academia forever. Oxford's first colleges appeared during this century. University College, Balliol, and Merton all claim to be the oldest, each founded in the 1260s and 1270s. These represented a new model for education, self-governing communities of scholars with their own rules, their own finances, and their own endowments. The idea was revolutionary, learning supported by permanent institutions rather than the whims of individual teachers. But even during those years of chaos and siege, scholars had kept coming to Oxford. Now, with peace restored, their numbers swelled. The real catalyst came in 1167. Henry II, furious with France, banned English students from attending the University of Paris. They needed somewhere to go, and many chose Oxford. The trickle of scholars became a flood. Informal teaching arrangements solidified into something more permanent. Oxford was becoming a university town, though no one used that word yet. But Oxford wasn't peaceful. In 1248, there was a riot so severe that the university suspended operations entirely. Scholars and townspeople clashed repeatedly throughout the century. The violence reflected deeper resentments. Students were often exempt from local laws. They drove up rents. They were rowdy and arrogant. The locals worked hard for their living and resented these privileged young men treating their town like a playground. By 1284, Merton College established the first proper academic structure, with fellows, statutes, and a formal curriculum. Other colleges quickly followed the model. The University of Oxford was no longer just an idea. It was a physical reality built in stone, and it was changing the character of the entire town. Then, in the 14th century, something came that was worse than any riot. The 14th century was a time when you definitely wouldn't have wanted to live in Oxford. First, in 1348, the Black Death reached England. By 1349, it was in Oxford. The plague killed indiscriminately. Scholars, townspeople, monks, merchants. No one was safe. Estimates suggest that between a third and half of Oxford's population died within months. Entire households were wiped out. Bodies piled up faster than they could be buried. The university nearly collapsed from lack of students and teachers. Then, only a few years later, disease turned into violence. On February 10th, 1355, Saint Scholastica's Day, 2 students drinking at the Swindlestock Tavern complained about the quality of the wine. The landlord argued back. Insults flew, then punches, then the students threw their drinks in his face. The situation spiraled out of control. For 3 days, Oxford descended into chaos. Townspeople attacked scholars with swords and bows. Scholars fought back with whatever they could find. By the time the violence ended, 63 students and 30 townspeople lay dead. The aftermath was brutal. King Edward III sided with the university. As punishment, Oxford's mayor and council were forced to attend a mass every year for the dead scholars and pay annual penance. This humiliating ritual continued for 470 years. But Oxford rebuilt. New colleges rose from the ashes. New College was founded in 1379 with a revolutionary architectural plan, and All Souls College followed in 1438, specifically to pray for those killed in the 100 Years' War. The 15th century brought relative stability, but the 16th century brought religious upheaval. Henry VIII broke with Rome in 1534, and Oxford, so deeply connected to the Catholic Church, was thrown into turmoil. Monasteries were dissolved, relics were destroyed, and scholars were forced to choose sides. The city's religious houses, Osney Abbey, Rully Abbey, and others, were torn down, their stones repurposed for new buildings. Then came the first Queen of England, Mary I, Bloody Mary, a Catholic queen determined to reverse her father's reforms. In 1555 and 1556, Oxford became the site of some of the most infamous executions in English history. 3 men, Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Bishop Hugh Latimer, and Bishop Nicholas Ridley, were burned at the stake for heresy in what is now Broad Street. Their deaths were meant to terrify, but instead they inspired. A memorial, the Martyrs' Memorial, would later be erected on the spot where Protestant England remembers its dead. Oxford had survived plague and riot, but now it had to survive the violent swings of religious reformation. And the next century would test it like never before. 1642, England was at war with itself. King Charles I and Parliament were locked in a struggle for power, and Oxford found itself at the center of the conflict. Charles chose Oxford as his capital after being driven from London. For 4 years, from 1642 to 1646, Oxford was a Royalist stronghold. The king and his court took up residence in Christ Church. Colleges were turned into barracks, ammunition stores, and weapons workshops. The city's beautiful quadrangles echoed with the sounds of drilling soldiers and cannon fire. Life in Civil War Oxford was hard. Food was scarce, disease spread, and the constant threat of siege hung over everyone. Parliamentarian forces surrounded the city multiple times, cutting off supply lines. Students continued their studies as best they could, but many abandoned their books to fight. In 1646, the war turned decisively against the king. Oxford was besieged one final time, and Charles, realizing the situation was hopeless, disguised himself as a servant and fled the city under cover of darkness. Oxford surrendered shortly afterward. Parliament's troops marched in, and the Royalist dream died. The victorious parliamentarians systematically demolished most of the medieval stonework of Oxford Castle to ensure it could never be used as a Royalist stronghold again. Only St. George's Tower was spared. It was needed as the county prison. The Norman Motte, the great earthen mound built in the 1070s, still stands in Oxford today. The restoration of Charles II in 1660 brought Oxford back into royal favor. The king remembered the city's loyalty and poured money into building projects. The Sheldonian Theatre, designed by young Christopher Wren in 1664, was a masterpiece of the era. It was one of Wren's first major works, and it showed the confidence of a city emerging from trauma. Then in 1681, Charles called a parliament in Oxford to avoid London's hostile crowds. It met in the Convocation House and lasted just a week before Charles dissolved it. It was the last time an English parliament met outside London. Oxford ended the 17th century scarred but intact, its university stronger than ever. And as a new century dawned, the city was about to enter its golden age. The 18th century was Oxford's age of reason. The university produced some of the greatest minds in British history. John Locke's ideas on governance and liberty spread across Europe and inspired revolutions. Adam Smith studied here before writing The Wealth of Nations. Edmund Halley, the astronomer, became civilian professor of geometry and predicted the return of the comet that would bear his name. New colleges continued to appear. Worcester College was founded in 1714, rising from the ruins of Gloucester College. The city's streets were paved, new bridges were built, and infrastructure improved. Oxford was no longer a medieval relic. It was becoming a modern city. The city was also expanding physically. The Radcliffe Camera, one of Oxford's most iconic buildings, was completed in 1749. Designed by James Gibbs, it was a circular library unlike anything else in England. Funded by a bequest from Dr. John Radcliffe, it became the reading room of the Bodleian Library, one of the oldest libraries in Europe, and symbolized Oxford's commitment to knowledge. Yet the university remained deeply conservative. Religious tests excluded anyone who wasn't Anglican. Catholics, Protestant dissenters, and Jews could not attend. Women were completely barred. The curriculum was rigid, focused on classics and theology, while the natural sciences were largely ignored. Critics called Oxford sleepy and out of touch, more interested in port and privilege than progress. Underneath the calm surface, tensions simmered. The town still resented the gown. Riots occasionally flared up, though nothing like the violence of previous centuries. The university tightened its grip on the city's governance, controlling trade and politics in ways that bred resentment among merchants and workers. As the 18th century ended, Oxford was beautiful, wealthy, and intellectually vibrant. But it was also deeply complacent, and the industrial age was about to force it to change. The 19th century transformed Oxford from a medieval university town into an industrial city. The Oxford Canal opened in 1790, connecting Oxford to the national waterway network. Coal, iron, and manufactured goods flowed in. Agricultural produce flowed out. Trade boomed. Then in 1844, the Great Western Railway arrived. Oxford was now connected to London, Birmingham, and beyond. Travel that once took days now took hours. The railway brought tourists. Middle-class Victorians flocked to Oxford to admire the dreaming spires and walk through ancient quads. The city became romanticized in literature and art. But the railway also brought industry. Working-class suburbs sprang up around the station. Factories appeared. The population exploded, from around 12,000 in 1801 to over 49,000 by 1901. The university underwent its own revolution. In 1854, Parliament forced Oxford to open its doors wider. Religious tests were gradually abolished, allowing dissenters and Catholics to enroll. In 1878, the first women's colleges were established, Lady Margaret Hall and Somerville College. Women could attend lectures and take exams, though they wouldn't receive full degrees until 1920. Academic standards rose dramatically. The sciences finally got their due. The University Museum of Natural History opened in 1860, a Gothic revival masterpiece housing Britain's growing scientific collections. The Oxford Movement, a religious revival led by John Henry Newman, shook the Church of England to its core. Churches were decorated again with stained glass and ornate altars. And remarkably, they helped restore Christmas itself. Since Oliver Cromwell had banned Christmas in the 1650s, the holiday had been muted, almost forgotten. The Tractarians brought it back. Church decorations, special musical services, charity events for the poor. By the 1870s, the Victorian Christmas we recognize today was in full bloom, thanks in part to Oxford. In 1896, something revolutionary happened. William Morris, not the famous designer, but a local businessman, founded Morris Motors in a garage on Long Wall Street. He started by making bicycles, then motorcycles, then cars. It was a tiny operation at first, but it would grow into one of Britain's major automobile manufacturers and transform Oxford's economy forever. As the 19th century closed, Oxford was caught between two identities, the ancient university and the modern industrial city. And the 20th century would force it to reconcile them. The Oxford Movement, a religious revival led by John Henry Newman, shook the Church of England to its core. Churches were decorated again with stained glass and ornate altars. And remarkably, they helped restore Christmas itself. Since Oliver Cromwell had banned Christmas in the 1650s, the holiday had been muted, almost forgotten. The Tractarians brought it back. Church decorations, special musical services, charity events for the poor. By the 1870s, the Victorian Christmas we recognize today was in full bloom, thanks in part to Oxford. In 1896, something revolutionary happened. William Morris, not the famous designer, but a local businessman, founded Morris Motors in a garage on Long Wall Street. He started by making bicycles, then motorcycles, then cars. It was a tiny operation at first, but it would grow into one of Britain's major automobile manufacturers and transform Oxford's economy forever. As the 19th century closed, Oxford was caught between two identities, the ancient university and the modern industrial city. And the 20th century would force it to reconcile them. When World War I broke out in 1914, Oxford threw itself into the war effort. The university emptied as students and dons enlisted. The colleges were turned into hospitals and officer training facilities. Over 14,000 Oxford alumni served in the war, and more than 2,700 were killed. The war memorials that appeared in college chapels afterward were sobering reminders of a lost generation. William Morris's young car company, barely a year old, immediately stopped production and transformed into a munitions factory. The Cowley Works became part of the trench warfare department, producing 50,000 naval mine sinkers and Stokes trench mortars. The assembly lines that once built civilian cars now built weapons of war. After the war, Morris Motors exploded. By the 1920s, it was producing thousands of cars annually. The Morris Oxford, Morris Minor, and later the Mini became icons of British motoring. Cowley became a working-class industrial district, a stark contrast to the university's ancient streets. Thousands of workers flooded into Oxford for factory jobs. The population surged. Housing estates sprang up. The city's economy diversified beyond the university for the first time in centuries. But not everyone was happy about it. The private developers built walls. By 1934, 9-foot-high brick barriers topped with revolving spikes were built, cutting right through streets and physically separating the council estate from the private homes. Residents of the Cutslow estate woke up one morning to find their routes blocked, their access to shops and schools suddenly longer, their very existence declared inferior. The outrage was immediate. Protests erupted. The Oxford Mail ran blistering editorials. Working-class groups organized demonstrations. But the wall stayed up. For 25 years, the barriers stood, a physical monument to class division. Finally, in 1959, after years of campaigning, the walls came down. Bulldozers reduced them to rubble. Even today, walk through Oxford and you'll pass from cobblestone college quadrangles to working-class neighborhoods in 5 minutes. Two worlds still not quite touching. Meanwhile, as Oxford grappled with its divisions, another kind of creation was underway, and it all started in a pub called the Eagle and Child. Every Tuesday morning, starting in the 1930s, a group calling themselves the Inklings met to drink beer and read unfinished manuscripts aloud. Two World War I veterans, J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, both damaged by the trenches, both searching for meaning in a mechanized age, were busy creating mythologies that would redefine fantasy literature forever. The Lord of the Rings, the Chronicles of Narnia, the Screwtape Letters, all of them drafted, debated, and refined in Oxford pubs and college rooms. When World War II began in 1939, Oxford was terrified of bombing. The government considered evacuating the university. Blackout curtains went up, air raid shelters were dug, and the city prepared for the worst. The Morris Works shifted to war production again, building tanks, munitions, and aircraft parts. Oxford became a center for code-breaking and secret intelligence work, with academics recruited into government service. And in a laboratory at the Dunn School of Pathology, two scientists were racing against time on a project that would save many more lives. Howard Florey and Ernst Chain were working to purify and mass-produce penicillin. Alexander Fleming had discovered the mold in London, but it was Oxford that figured out how to turn it into medicine. By 1942, they had succeeded. Penicillin became the wonder drug of the war, saving countless soldiers from infections that would have killed them in previous conflicts. It was one of the most important medical breakthroughs in human history, and it happened in Oxford. Miraculously, Oxford was largely spared in World War II. Hitler reportedly ordered his Luftwaffe to avoid bombing the city because he intended to make it his capital of occupied Britain. Whether this is true or propaganda is debated, but the fact remains, while Coventry, London, and Birmingham were devastated, Oxford survived almost unscathed. Then on May 6, 1954, something remarkable happened at Oxford's Iffley Road track. Roger Bannister, a medical student at the university, ran a mile in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds. It was the first time in recorded history that anyone had broken the 4-minute barrier. The achievement captured the world's imagination and proved that human limits are often just assumptions waiting to be shattered. The university admitted more students than ever before, including increasing numbers of women and international students. In 1974, the first 5 men's colleges finally admitted women, breaking centuries of tradition. Meanwhile, Morris Motors had merged with Austin to form the British Motor Corporation, then became part of British Leyland in 1968. The company struggled through strikes, poor management, and competition from foreign car makers. By the 1980s, British Leyland collapsed. The Cowley plant survived under new ownership, eventually becoming part of BMW and producing the reborn Mini. But the glory days of British car manufacturing were over. The next question is, how does Oxford fare in modern times? Today, Oxford is a city of about 165,000 people, and the university remains its heart. 39 colleges now operate, educating around 25,000 students from across the globe. Oxford consistently ranks as one of the top 3 universities worldwide. Its alumni include 28 British prime ministers, over 70 Nobel Prize winners, and countless other luminaries. Stephen Hawking, Oscar Wilde, Hugh Grant, Bill Clinton, Emma Watson. The list goes on and on. The city's economy has transformed yet again. The car plant in Cowley still operates, now owned by BMW and producing the Mini. But Oxford's real growth is in technology, pharmaceuticals, and research. The COVID-19 pandemic put Oxford on the global stage in 2020. Scientists at the university, working with AstraZeneca, developed one of the first effective vaccines. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was distributed to billions of people worldwide, saving countless lives. But modern Oxford faces challenges. Housing is extortionately expensive, pushing out working-class families. Traffic is a nightmare. The city struggles to balance tourism, which brings millions of visitors annually with the needs of residents. Town and gown tensions persist in new forms. Disputes over the university's enormous wealth while local services are underfunded. Oxford today is a living paradox. Ancient and cutting-edge, exclusive and diverse, beautiful and troubled, inspiring and frustrating. And it continues to shape the world in ways both profound and subtle. From a muddy ford where oxen crossed a river to one of the most famous cities on earth, Oxford's story is one of survival, reinvention, and relentless forward motion. Oxford's history is messy, contradictory, and deeply human, much like any other city. It's not perfect and never has been, but as this video has shown, Oxford has so much to be proud of and will continue to forge the world's greatest minds for decades to come. If you've enjoyed this journey through Oxford's complete history, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the cities that shaped the world. And as always, we'll see you in the past.